Good morning, my sweet friends, and welcome back to Peaceful Bird Gardens. My name is Danny. It is a lovely November morning here, and I wanted to talk to you today about native plants and why they're so important. So we live in Florida, Central Florida, Zone 9B, 10A, and I'm sitting in our front native forest garden area here in the front of our house, right near our bench. And first I think I need to probably tell people what native plants are because in my experience, not a lot of people understand what that term native means. So native plants, I mean, you know, it's in the name. They are native here. They grew up here. They've been here for millennia. We have fossil records, you know, of native plants like mangroves. So they've been here for millennia. They have become very well adapted to the conditions here in Florida, the soils. They have very special, close relationships with the soil microbes. You know, they're very well adapted to, say, salt or wind or, you know, whatever these special conditions are here in Florida, because we are a very diverse state. So with climate change, that may change. But, you know, in South Florida, it's getting more into tropical, but not completely. It's definitely, you know, warmer there. They have almost no frost whatsoever. Whereas here in Central Florida, we may get the occasional, you know, frost every so many years, you know, every so many years, 5 years, 10 years, something like that. Whereas up north, in northern Florida, they can get a frost, you know, every other year or sometimes every year. So there's very different, you know, climatic, you know, conditions. The soils are very different, but not. So we have our state soil is Mayaca. It's a very sandy, it's what you think of, you know, when you go to, you know, someone, you know, when you dig up soil in Florida, it's what you think of. It's very sandy, it's very free draining, not a lot of nutrients, but it's not completely nutrient deplete. It's just that they're very free moving, you know, very free draining. And, you know, that varies depending on where you are in the state. The topography and the geography, you know, changes throughout the state. But one thing is that native plants, they do it best here. They just do. They provide benefit to the local wildlife. They're absolutely beautiful. People think that I've been told that native plants are blousy and they're, you know, they're unkempt and how dare they, you know, look wild and, you know, but, and that is, you know, that can absolutely be a thing if you allow that, but they can also be kept, you know, in a lovely manicured way if that is, you know, your desire. So behind me here, I wanted to show you is Beautyberry, Protocarpus Americana. So this is one of my absolute favorite native plants. A lot of birds rely on especially migratory birds. Now it's not just the native animals that live here all the time, but migratory species that come through. Oh, there's a sweet little bee checking me out. The migratory species, they rely on certain foods to be here when they get here. And if they're not here, that can be dangerous for them. So native plants are a staple that they can absolutely rely on being here, you know, or they have been historically, you know, time after time. So something that we can do as stewards, you know, of our community is to plant these native plants so that the birds have them available to them when they get here. I mean, having a seed feeder is great. It's a wonderful, you know, fat source for them. But to have the food that they're, you know, that they're used to, you know, that readily available to them, you know, is more important, you know, foraging and things like that. It's just better for them than, you know, going to a stationary feeder. But feeders are also a good way to support your local birds. So one of the reasons why I love these plants so much is that, as I said, they have made relationships and associations with the local ecology. So they don't need, once they're established, many of them are incredibly drought tolerant unless they're a wetland plant, and then that's a different situation. But they don't require fertilizers. Oh my gosh. mind-blowing. Yeah, they don't require fertilizers. Actually, they can be harmed by fertilizers because you may be damaging that microbial relationship that they have, with the microbes that are already in the soil. So Beautyberry is just one. It's so adaptable. It can grow in full sun. It can grow in part shade. I am so sorry. My neighbor is power washing apparently at this current moment. So I live in a neighborhood, in a suburban neighborhood. Full catastrophe of life goes on here. So we don't live in the country. So it's fantastic. It can grow in so many different lighting conditions. It does like it to be a little more moist, but it's also drought tolerant. I've noticed it to be drought tolerant once it's established, but tolerant. Not loving it, if you know what I'm saying. So they do lose their leaves for a little while in the winter time, but in the spring they put on these gorgeous sprays of flowers, these pink, just kind of flowers all the way up the stem. And then after that, they have these beautiful fuchsia colored berries that are actually edible to humans as well. It's just that they don't taste all that great. So usually people process them into jelly jam or wines and things like that. But our local birds absolutely devour them. They absolutely love the beautyberry. It's a fantastic screening plant too because it grows very quickly. It can, get very tall in a very short amount of time. So if you have an area that's kind of difficult, maybe it's a little shady, maybe it's, you're not quite sure what to put there. This is a fantastic plant, potentially for that space. Now that being said, it's not so non-native. Not all non-native plants are bad necessarily. We have Protocarpus on our property. It's absolutely non-native. Protocarpuses are non-native to Florida, you guys, just in case. Neither are crepe myrtles, neither are crotons, neither are a lot of the palm trees that people have growing here. They're non-native. I know. Neither are a lot of the hibiscus that you see. They're not native. They're not native to Florida. Just because people plant them everywhere does not automatically make them a native plant. Just because you see them everywhere does not make dwarf schefflera a native plant. Okay. So, but we have found Protocarpus to be a wonderful, plant. They actually fix nitrogen from what I've found in the research. Ours support a ridiculous amount of ladybugs. I don't know why. I've researched online and haven't found a relationship between this particular family of plants and ladybirds, as I like to call them. But we have all stages of life of ladybugs in our Protocarpus. They also provide habitat for snakes, and birds nest in here regularly. It also provides a screen between my property and my neighbor's property. So it's not necessarily that all, non-native plants are not awesome. There are some wonderful ones out there that are beneficial even to the wildlife. It's just that many of the ones that are ubiquitous in our areas, people pull from the same list of, basic landscape plants like dwarf scheffleras, as I mentioned, crotons, crepe myrtles, these types of plants, bougainvillea. They're just not beneficial to the local wildlife. I mean, they're pretty and they might provide some cover, and things like that. But, there are, let me just say there's much more beneficial plants that you can plant. And again, there are so many natives that can fit so many different situations in your landscape. And it doesn't have to be your entire landscape is native. You can pick little sections, or you can just, sprinkle them in here or there, or have like a wildlife, area, or a pollinator garden that's native. So there are all kinds of options that you can do, but just don't discount them completely, and don't think that they can't be landscaped, into something that, a more constructed, I guess, garden. We have chosen to do ours a little more natural. That was by choice. I wanted a park, essentially, I wanted a park, kind of, not necessarily a park, but I wanted a more wild, preserve type habitat environment for our property. But that was a choice. And it's absolutely beautiful, and we've gotten lots of compliments about it from our neighbors, but, it's a little bit of work, but not in the nutrient and watering department, because in that way I'm hands off. So check out natives. Check out Florida native plants. They're beautiful, they're low maintenance, they're less time, so, and they support your local, if you're a birder, you need native plants in your garden. If you love butterflies, you need native plants in your garden. So yeah, if you are interested in this kind of content, if you're interested in gardening for wildlife, or gardening with ecological concepts in mind, or organic gardening, or food forests, I could go on and on, sustainable living, please subscribe to our channel, give us a like, and we hope to see you again on Peaceful Bird Gardens. Thank you so much. Have a lovely week.